I love this topic. People-powered progress, human connections to building bridges of impact. We're really going to be talking about caregiving. We're talking about developing human beings and the people that care for them. And we have this amazing panel that ranges from folks that care for young children, folks working with teens, and then with vets and their families. So we have sort of caregivers that work through the whole continuum of life. And so for the students in the room, I want you to be thinking about questions that you have about the caregiving roles that you're in now or that you're considering for the future, either as part of your life work or potentially a career, and you'll have a chance to ask these guys a few questions. But first, go Knicks! So I was telling Jerome, I grew up in Denver, lived here 35 years, but the last 35 years I've lived in Seattle, and I was a Sonics season ticket holder, so I watched every Sonics home game. So I watched Jerome play in Seattle for the Knicks, the Raptors, and the Pistons, and I was a super fan. I most appreciate your work ethic. You're just somebody who just works harder than anybody else. That sort of earned you the name the Junkyard Dog. And I thought, do you watch the end of the game last night? And did y'all know how that ended? Like the tip at the buzzer, it was called the most iconic Knicks shot of all time. I don't know if you buy that, maybe. But I think it's from OG, who he's a star, but he feels like a role player. Like what you really pioneered in the league of being a role player, of being a guy that did what he did for his team. So, did you feel that way about like a role player winning that game? I don't know if you got a mic over there. Use this one. Talk about being the role player in that.
Stand up. You see how we answer to Carol quickly. Yes. First and foremost, give it up for yourselves, please, for being here. Thank you, Miss Carol, for always putting such a wonderful event together and bringing together minds. I love the fact that we're prioritizing human connection because it was witnessed last night. There was a lot of human connection going on. And to your point, the role player ended up being the unsung hero. Yes, OG, give it up for OG. And another unsung hero was Jalen Brunson. Not in the way that people say, hey, he took that last shot before the last shot and missed it, but because he actually took a third less money to play for the Knicks, knowing that they were going to use the money to sign OG and other players. He didn't know exactly who they were going to sign, but they signed OG. That was their first big contract that they signed. And this is something that as humans and connecting, you have to kind of think like these stars of today, because on the biggest stage, that decision was the first thing that popped into my mind, because OG got the tip, and now he's up for the greatest shot. But if it wasn't for someone who said, you know what, I'm willing to take less in order to know that my future will be a better chance of winning. And it's uniting an entire city, because now different races are connecting with this jersey. You know, there's a big saying about, you live in New York, you can live anywhere. I didn't know that until I lived there. And I was like, oh, they right. Because if you can survive this. I lived in Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, some great cities. And Denver just had, a national championship, NBA championship, just a couple years back. So you guys already, you've swam in the confetti. You've tasted the sweet drink. New Yorkers are dying. They've been dying for a long time. So this to them is like, Christmas in the World Series. So yes, it was a great opportunity for a role player.
So I'm going to ask each of you, because you've all now, in this phase of work that you're in, you've all stepped into impact work, working with others. And I want to know where, if there's a story behind that, like when you decided to step into impact work, specifically, caring for the caregivers. So you can start. Is there a point at which you came to that decision? Was it after playing basketball or before?
Well, it was definitely during. It was my rookie year, and I was in Detroit. I wasn't playing because I was a rookie, and we have to, back in those days, you got to earn your stripes, those sort of things. So it was all about coming to work on time, early, for us young people out there, getting there 3 hours before practice started and staying 2 hours after work. Those were some of the things that the foundations that I had to do in order to gain the respect of the veterans. The veterans are the ones who helped me get on the court. But to your point, when it came to giving back, what happened was I would get home after practice on non-game days and just be bored out of my mind. Like, I have to wait a whole nother however many hours to get back in the gym again. So my brother, reading the newspaper, saw that in the city of Detroit, back in 1996-97, there was an article published that 33% of African-American students were dropping out of high school. 33%. So he reads me this article and he says, "You have to do something." And I said, "Me? I just got here." in my, Kevin Hart, "I just got here. What are you talking about?" So he says, "No, you have to do something. You have to come and talk to these kids, because how many kids dropped out of our high school back in Maryland?" I said, "Maybe one." So 33%. So imagine, if we started doing the numbers, like, man, that's a lot of kids if that many kids dropped out. So that's what propelled me through my brother, who said, "You're going to do this." And he's 1 year older than me, so I was like, okay. And we went down to the Brewster Wheeler projects and started an after-school mentoring program. We started connecting, and we started bringing these kids to games. And a very wise gentleman said on the stage, "You're not a product of your environment, you're a product of your expectations." And we started to expect these young people to get good grades. We started to expect them to graduate and want to go on to get college degrees and go to do bigger and brighter things. And as that happened, we started to have to go out and do more of what we were doing, which was connecting with more students. So don't want to hog the mic. There's other people, but that's where I started. That's why I'm still on mission today. I'm glad to have partners like NAF, who are in workforce readiness, and partners like Carol, who come out and make sure that all these students here, give it up for all the students. Come on, students, make some noise. All of you students get an opportunity to meet mentors, to meet people here. Make sure you're shaking hands. I've already been taking some pictures with some lovely young ladies who were New York Knicks fans, and some that aren't, because like I said, I respect all my teams that wrote me a check. So if you're in one of those cities, you can still, don't mind the jersey today. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. All right. Millions of Americans, as parents, siblings, and as professionals, care for young children. Michelle Kang leads the oldest advocacy group supporting early learning and those professionals in early learning. Michelle, what's your impact story? When and how and why were you motivated to because you have a 25-year career in early learning, so this is a long commitment. So where did that come from?
See, Carol, I'm like, oh, I was just going to sit. I'm so delighted to be with all of you, and so many of you I had the chance to say hello to last night. Thank you all for being part of this conference. And thank you, Carol, for convening this opportunity for us to talk about how we can make sure that we see possibilities, and all of you who are students see the possibilities ahead for you. I'm the daughter of Korean immigrants. I shared last night that my father came to this country with $200 in a single suitcase and a dream of possibility for the family that he and my mother would raise. And one thing that was clear to me as I was thinking about impact is I loved children, and I always thought that that would lead me down to a path of becoming a pediatrician. But it was an experience serving as a court advocate for an abused and neglected child that gave me a lens into systems and how so much of what children encounter happens in the systems and how they do or don't support them as they grow up, far before they even walk into a doctor's office. So it gave me the idea of thinking about how do we best support young children, and how do we support their families, and how do we support their caregivers in being able to support children at the most formative time of their life. You know, there are a million neural connections per second that are happening before the age of 5. The brain is more rapidly developing in these early years than any other time in our life. So when you think about the possibilities and you think about what we can do to help support young children and their development, it is this formative time and the educators that are working with them, who very often are women, who are people of color, and not often recognized for the professional work that they do. Most of our systems right now do not compensate them, value them, or respect them for the work that they do. So our work and my lens has always been thinking about how do we support young children, and how do we support these essential adults who work in homes, who work in centers and schools, to be able to help develop young children at their very best at the time that they most need our support and our attention. So it's been a career of being able to continue to think about how we move systems, how do we elevate these stories, and as on a personal note, I'm a mom. I have 3 sons. And being someone who had the opportunity to experience high-quality early learning for them, and seeing the transformative impact of early childhood educators in my own life, including one, my oldest child, where we learned that he was a different kind of learner, one that's on the autism spectrum, because of the partnership of these transformative professionals who work with young children. So it has become a lifelong passion, and I'm very honored to be here alongside these panelists to talk about how we continue to elevate the importance of relationships and human connection.
Thank you, Michelle. Steve Schwab leads the Dole Foundation, and they support caregivers, particularly of veterans. So it's a unique group of both clients and caregivers. So Steve, tell us a little bit more about your organization and maybe how and when you came into that impact role yourself.
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first. How many of the students, or everyone in the room, has siblings? How many folks have more than 3 siblings? Wow, a lot of hands.
Wow.
Love it. I have 7, one of 7 boys in my family, all boys.
In what
So
order?
a basketball team, Jerome. And actually, a couple of us can play. We all have our own specialties. Mine wasn't basketball, mine was soccer. How many of you heard of the American Community Survey, ACS? A couple hands in the room. Not surprising. ACS is this nation's barometer on a whole series of lifestyle measurements that feeds the country's statistics. So, every 10 years we do that thing called the census. ACS is the barometer year after year on how people are feeling, how they're doing. And right now, the ACS says that this generation of young people, so all of you, care more about this country than any other generation in the history of America. Let's give a round of applause. ACS also says that this generation, so you, trusts far less than any other. I see some heads nodding. Is that true? Is that true? You trust institutions less, government less? Maybe trust the media less? Trust authority a little less? But you care. I bring that up to say, when I was young, living with 6 brothers, care, the very notion of caring, was a construct in my family that was taught at the very earliest age. And if you look at the history and evolution of humanity, talking about human connection, Tom, care is one of the things that human beings were taught at the very beginning of civilization. And so why do I mention that? I mention that because right now you care more than any other generation in the history of this country, which means that it's really, really important for you to think about work that's going to give you a sense of impact, that's going to fuel your sense of nourishment around care and love for your community and love of nation at a time when the ACS also says that this nation is more divided than ever. How many people are surprised by that? Anybody surprised by that? A show of hands? No one's surprised by that, right? So when I was young, my father came home after 45 years of working at Eastman Kodak Company in Rochester, New York, and called a family meeting with his 7 sons. And my dad rarely got emotional, family of men. And he was teary-eyed, and we were all around the dining room table, and he told us he was leaving Kodak, this company that had done everything for our family, and that his life lesson to his 7 sons was do work, find a vocation that creates impact on people's lives, that makes a difference. Yeah. Thank you. And that was a defining moment in my life to choose a path of service. Some of my brothers went into the service, to the military. For a variety of reasons, I wasn't eligible to do that. So I chose a vocation to support the families of those who support our freedom and security as a country. And so I'll look forward to talking through why that notion of care and caring, and why the news about you all caring more about this country than ever before is really good news, and why the statistics say that's really important for your future. Because post-2030, there are going to be more people for the first time in American history, ever in the history of this country, over the age of 50 than under the age of 18, for the first time in American history. That means that you, the generation of youngsters, are going to have a higher level of caregiving responsibilities than ever before. Parents, siblings, friends, loved ones are living longer, healthier lives. How many people have grandparents that have lived in their 90s? Lots of hands. That didn't happen 20 or 30 years ago. So the whole construct of caring in this country is changing right before our eyes. And I'll end just by suggesting that caregiving and care has to become a kitchen table conversation for your generation as much as retirement and college and where you're going to live and how you're going to raise your kids is, because the new requirement of your generation is you're going to inherit caregiving responsibilities for folks in your family that are going to be living longer lives than ever. And it means everything's changing in this country. So I'll leave you there. That's what's led me to the movement that I'm involved in and why I'm focused on the population that supports our veterans and service members.
Thank you, Steve. So I'd love to have each of you reflect on sort of keys to caregiving, particularly around the idea of human connection. And let's go littles and teens and then veterans. So Michelle, what do you think is key for kids in terms of developing those human connection skills? And maybe if you want to add a reflection on what's important for caregivers, you could But what have we learned lately about teaching young kids those connection, relationship skills?
Right. Well, first, there is nothing more important in these early years than human connection. Like, one of the things that we know from now 100 years of doing this work is the undisputable fact is that the foundation of social interactions, of learning how to make sense of the world, of having an understanding of how people relate, how we relate to community, comes with the nurture of adults, facilitating learning through play. I'm just going to say that because one of the things that's so important about these early years is that children learn best through play. And what we know is that happens through these human connections of adults facilitating learning with young children. So when we think about how important human connection is, one of the things that the COVID pandemic did that was so difficult is it took away those places where we have human connection, because in those early years, we were saying we need to be 6 feet apart, we can't be interacting, we can't facilitate that. When children learn how to literally share or to solve a problem together by building blocks or by sitting down together to have play acting and learn how to talk with one another, those are the early foundations of then what happens many years later in the workplace, in schools, as adults. And so there is nothing more important than how we can help facilitate as many of these interactions as possible for children in those early years. And what we want to continue to emphasize, especially in an age where we talk about how technology continues to be a way that we want to receive information, but even facilitate conversations, is we can't take the human out of any of that. In the early years, there's nothing more fundamentally important.
So we're not going to have a little AI bot take care of our kids?
No, to borrow colleagues' word, no bots for tots.
All right,
And there is nothing more important than humans caring for young children.
All right, who here is considering a career in early childhood care and learning? Anybody? Are you? I thought you might. So tell me why, and if you have a question for Michelle about care, you must agree with her that early learning is key?
Yes, definitely agree with that. I am a registered behavior technician right now, and I've been doing that for the last 3 years, and I absolutely love it. And it's so interesting to see how you have to, obviously everybody's different, right? And so we need to be able to adjust and adapt to different learning styles and different, ways of teaching and stuff. So I guess one of my questions for Care is what have you found for how to be able to adjust to different teaching styles, I guess, with, still caring and, still being collaborative.
One thing unique about these early years is early childhood and childcare is both care and education, right? Like, we are doing both. You are caring for and nurturing young children, but you are also providing foundational elements of development and learning. And one of the things that we talk about that's developmentally appropriate practice, that's something that we talk about at NACY as the critical core part of what good early childhood is. It emphasizes individuality and context, and finding ways that you are finding it in simple words to say, how do you develop the best out of that child? How do you see them and understand and bring forward their gifts? A very strengths-based view to joyful learning, and saying, we're not going to treat all children as the same, that they all learn the same way, that they all are going to absorb information the same way, but instead to say, how do we help address where children are and to bring them along in learning, addressing the fact that they have individual learning styles, but also context. And great early childhood educators do that. They provide that context and nurture that. And for someone like you, I'm excited about what you can bring with your lens and your experience to be able to bring that for young children.
So are you confident that this career path is going to be not only emotionally rewarding, but financially rewarding? And is there anything you want to ask Michelle about what she's doing to advocate for professionals in this area?
I was not expecting you to bring up finances, to be honest.
I mean, are you worried about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
Michelle, are you going to fix this and make it a viable,
Oh,
sustainable job?
if I had a magic wand and I would wave the wand and fix compensation for early childhood
All right,
educators.
done.
No question. We're working on it, though. It's going to
Okay.
take all of us. We just had a session this morning where we talked about advocacy and bringing the stories and elevating and saying these are professional roles that deserve professional compensation and wages because of how valuable and important it is. Yeah?
Jerome, you're spending a lot of time now in schools and with teenagers and with people working with teenagers. Which of those roles are you most excited about? Teaching people that work in out of school, and what are your hopes and dreams for those people?
Well, I think that the thing that I get most out of these connections with young people and the staff is really the ability to show the importance of the visualization of someone reaching their dream. You know, as a child sitting in class, there's a lot of daydreaming going on. Whether you think you're daydreaming or you don't, at some point in the day, that your mind's gonna drift. And I often drifted into, what would it be like to be like Dr. J? You know,
Yeah,
what would
he
it be
was
like
he was
to be
totally
like
my
Michael
idol
Jordan
in-
and Magic Johnson on the what would it be like? And
Yeah.
and those are my driftaways, and then there'd be a knock. Hey, Mr. Williams, you need to get back to what we're doing here. Yes, ma'am. Right?
Yeah.
So telling that story and getting the kids to connect with their dream, getting them to connect with what their vision is, and what do they drift off into that space, because that's a space where you can motivate. And when teachers understand that motivation lies within that space, it's all about connecting their learning to that space.
Yeah. But so few young men make it into the NBA nowadays.
That's
So
right.
few women make it into the WNBA. Should teachers be encouraging that? Well, how do you feel about being realistic or aspirational?
Well, that's where I was going, because in 8th grade, I had a conversation with my English teacher. And the conversation went like this. I said, hey, I'm going to make it to the NBA, and I won't need English doing these book reports where I'm going, because I have to do the play, run the play, shoot the shot. And she said, wait a minute. Let me tell you how you're going to need English. She says, what if you ever write a book? What happens if you ever produce some poetry? What happens when you have to stand on the stage and articulate to an audience or after the game and explain what happened in the game? So I said, well, I don't think I'm ever going to want to write a book. And I'm not too keen on poetry. But that podium thing got my attention. Okay. So that was her way of getting to me, but that also showed me she cared about my dream, so I didn't want to let her down, so I tried to do better in English. I ended up getting an A and a B in that class, just because she took the time to think about what she could do to motivate me, and that's part of it. So that's why I encourage teachers to really engage with their students, and it's really a hard ask. And I really agree with the fact
especially
that,
around visualizing what's
hold on
possible,
one
right?
second, because I got to get back to this. These teachers should be paid like professionals. They have one of the hardest jobs. Educators, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Educators. And it's so impactful that we're putting our life, next generation, in the palm of their hands every day and relying on them, but then not compensating. That's not right. So let me just...
All right, who's thinking about being a teacher, maybe a high school teacher, a counselor, working with young people? Anybody have a comment or question for Jerome in that space?
I
I guess, do you feel if they were compensated more, then they would be more engaged or better leaders and more inspiring to the youth?
Yeah, I don't really equate that so much towards money, because I believe that the good teachers, it doesn't matter what their compensation is. It would definitely make their lives easier, because then you have some teachers who don't necessarily love their job. So would be paying them more, motivate them? I doubt it, because if you don't like it, you just don't like it. But I will say this, it's so important that, especially when the majority of teachers that teach students that look like me don't look like me, there's a major impact that has long term. The teacher that I'm speaking of, her name is Miss Pico. Why do I remember her name? Because she took the time. And I still communicate with Miss Pico to this day, because she took the time. And she didn't look like me, and I noticed that. And there were others. Miss Stutes in the 3rd grade. She told me she was going to call my mother that evening at 6 p.m. Now, in today's world, there's caller ID, there's blocking, we can turn the phones off. The phones don't even ring at home, because we don't have home phones anymore. But back then, at 6 p.m., that phone rang. And I had a jolt of, uh-oh, that came across my whole being, because I knew what was going to happen. And all I heard was, hello. Oh, nice to hear from you. Oh, is that right? Oh, he did. He said that? And I was like, I'm dead. That was Miss Stutes. But why do I remember Miss Stutes' name? Because she took the time.
Does your mom ever get that call?
I would say my mom got that call several times. So yeah, I agree.
But now you appreciate that call, right?
I would say so, yeah. Being like in a higher education setting outside of public school, I found a deep appreciation for professors or like professionals that are willing to take the time to kind of like help build a foundation for myself. I feel like in a way there's like a with great power comes great responsibility type of thing with that. And it's very prevalent now that I'm old enough to see it. But back then I didn't.
Thank you. Jerome, you just, as I said in the introduction, you just worked harder than anybody out there. And you had this sense about, you're confident about your own identity, that you could take on whatever role the team needed. Where did that come from? Were teachers and counselors involved in that? Was it a coach? Was it your mom kicking your butt?
Well, I came from a family that had about 83 first cousins. So my grandfather, he fought in the Battle of Normandy. 9 months and 21 days on the front line. Got shot 3 times. Got 3 Purple Hearts. And, helped us to live free. Get to these 250 years. Well, he had a 3rd grade education and went on to build $1 million concrete business and couldn't read or write. Now, in a lot of ways you say, well, that's a success story. But I witnessed it through the eyes of a 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old at the time. And what I saw was dysfunction. Because in my household, my parents weren't operating under the same operating system that I was witnessing. And it was eye-opening because, to your point, what led me to this relentless opportunist leveraging everything, that's the ROLE. It was watching him on a daily basis basically kick butt and take numbers. And he did that in a way that was very unique and striking because he couldn't read. So he did it with his back, and that was the one thing that I was like, whoa, that's a lot of work. So that type of leadership, put something inside of me to say, whoa, I can do it, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to find something that I enjoy to do. So my dad really made an impact because he was the one who put the basketball in my hand and the one to, really enjoy that game and be able to propel myself and use it as a tool to reach dreams, right?
I appreciate that. I wanted to connect that aspiration and effort because, right, it was both about somebody helping you imagine something possible and different, but it was also about teaching the people it's about hard work.
Yes,
right?
It's the discipline that it takes.
Yeah.
Growing up in an environment where you see discipline, growing up in an environment where my dad went to work every day, got up at 5:30, went into work every single day. There were no days off, I'm sick today, and on certain days, he worked about 20 miles from our house, and he would ride his bike. And I'd be like, why is my dad riding his bike? And we have cars outside. It was the discipline. It was the hard work. It was the challenge. And he met it like it was just fun. Oh, I'm doing this for fun. Ride 20 miles to work and back afterwards at 5 in the morning. And, on the highway, it doesn't seem safe. Let alone that you're going to be tired when you get there. And then when you get off, you got to ride home. But it was amazing because it was the discipline. It was seeing that and understanding that, he made hard work look like fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerome. All right. Any of you thinking about working with veterans, or you're thinking about working with people that have experienced trauma, thinking about counseling careers in that space? Because we're going to invite Steve to talk a little bit about this. I'll come right back. You're thinking about working with veterans or do?
Yeah, so I spent the last 3 to 4 years working at a trauma treatment center, primarily with former military or active duty military.
What? Ask Steve something about how we can make that better, what he's working on.
How can we make that better?
Well, thank you for your interest in working with veterans. There's 11 million veterans currently across the country. There happens to be a lot in this particular part of the country. This is a military town. This morning I spent a couple of hours at the Marcus Institute for Brain Health. I don't know how many folks are here local? Okay, great. Like some of the best healthcare, both physical, mental, and emotional, for military and veteran populations is right here in Denver, in Colorado, on the UC campus, the Anschutz Medical Campus downtown. And this morning, I was at a facility that does a 3-week intensive program for veterans who have suffered traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, we call them. It's a signature wound of the most recent war. Jerome talked about his dad serving in World War II in Normandy. We just had the anniversary of the Normandy invasion in early June. There aren't many veterans left of that generation. We call them the greatest generation for a reason. We're all here because they saved the world, right? The post 9/11 generation, that's the younger veteran generation who served after 9/11, have survived battlefield wounds at a rate far higher than anyone ever expected. So that means that we have a whole generation of Americans who've come home with injuries that make it hard for them to exist and have a normal life, whatever normal means. So that requires a great deal of intensive transitional care to help those veterans reconnect with society. How many people in the room would say they have some kind of a connection with someone that is military connected? Wow, a lot of hands. I'm very happy to hear that. That is very unusual to see so many hands come up. Less than 1%, less than 1/2 of the country serves in the military. That's a small part of the population, which means most of the country is disconnected from the veteran population. I have another question for the audience. How many people would say that in the last 3 months they've experienced loneliness? Don't be shy to raise your hand. It's very common. Fair amount of hands. If I had a room full of veterans, I would ask that question. I would be very surprised if every hand in the room didn't go up. Who's heard sort of the literature or the recent research done on loneliness as a core issue facing the world? Has anybody heard anything about that? So much of this generation and veterans are medicated for their mental and emotional conditions, right? And that's a fair, fine thing to be. Folks need medical interventions for their mental and emotional wounds. It's very, very common. But the veteran population is usually over-medicated. So for my friend who wants to work with the veteran population, we're now working a lot on preventative care, things that we can do like meditation and art therapy. Tyler and I spent the morning inside this art therapy studio learning how using art as a therapy is a growing practice to avoid medicine. But I want to make a point related to loneliness. This is really important for your generation. I study data, I look at statistics. Loneliness is the #1 threat facing our country today. Countries around the world are beginning to build national strategies to combat loneliness because of our dependence on devices and AI. How many people feel better in this room than they do in a room by themselves? How many people feel better in a room by themselves than being in a room full of people like this? Okay.
There's a couple of us here.
What's that? Yeah. When we're born with the yearn to connect, to be around other human beings. Connections are oxygen for the human condition. And the point that I want to end with, this goes back to veterans, is that Jerome talked a little bit about what happened in the olden days when we used to have to actually pick up the phone when someone calls us. I have 15 nieces and nephews. I can't get them to pick up the phone. I can text them or Snapchat them, but they call me, they're like, why are you calling me? Because I want to connect. I want to hear a voice. I want to gain the energy that comes with that sense of connection. And I'm going to challenge all of you to think about the ways that you're connecting with each other that is independent from those devices and from AI and from video games and screens, because it's going to allow you to live longer, happier, healthier lives. And we're right now seeing a bit of a ricochet effect. People are, because of the pandemic, because of AI, they're kind of looking back at the traditional ways of forming human connections, being around their friends and loved ones. That's where we're moving in the veteran and military space, is creating human connection that's sort of old-fashioned, getting us away out in front of, I just heard someone's device ding, so don't look at it. Pay attention. But I'm going to challenge you to find ways to make human connection. And last thing is, find ways to exercise your brain, whether that's meditation, or how many folks meditate? Or how many folks know how to do heavy breathing exercises? If you found a way to do that 3 to 4 times a week, I use an app called Calm. 10 minutes a day I meditate in the morning, 10 minutes. It's changed my life. And I'm probably going to live more years than not doing it, because we exercise our bodies and we seldom exercise our brain. That brain needs to be exercised because it's so impacted every single day. So where veteran medicine and clinical care is moving is preventative care, it's connection, it's getting underneath medication, it's working on prevention, and that's going to allow all of us to live healthier lives.
Thank you, Scott. Steve. Brother Scott, stand up and in 60 seconds, let's try to popcorn what we learned, what we heard, kind of celebrate the things that we had. That was 10 minutes of mic drops there by Mr. Schwab.
Teachers don't get paid enough. They should get paid more.
Relationships are key.
Relationships are
getting
key.
More important than ever.
Yeah. A practice in your day like meditation or exercise can add life and vigor to your existence.
Aspiration and effort matter, and we all need role models that call that out of us, that call the best of us out through play and through learning.
And that we can be role models to others.
That's a good list. Thank you. Well, this is really fun. It's interesting to bridge early learning to working with teens to working with vets, and we thought about how each of those people learn and grow in this new age. We thought about how caregivers, the role that they play in this new age, and so many of you in one way or another are going to step into these roles. So I hope you found a little bit of that interesting and inspiring, and that, like Jerome, you find a place where you can be a star as a role player with effort and aspiration. So thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.